Welcome to Get Your Mind Right, the podcast where merchant services, digital marketing, and personal growth collide. Tune in for real talk, fresh insights, and the motivation to level up.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Get Your Mind Right, Boots on the Ground. I've got two special guests today. I have Donna Bashi and Jason Abate from Community Choice Credit Union. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Well, it's good to have you both, Jason. And I tell you, this is a topic that personally I am very interested in, and this is a hot topic in merchant services, as I know it is in banking, and that is cannabis banking.
Yes, it is. It's something that obviously across the country, more and more states are making legal. More and more people are trying to enter. Recently our President Trump, even rescheduled it, and so it's really a hot topic. And because it's still federally illegal, but legal in many states, including here in Michigan, where Donna and I operate out of, it's definitely tricky, and you have to make sure you understand what you're doing, which makes us a trusted partner, a trusted banking and financial services partner, because we do know what we're doing because we've been in the game for so long. But it's definitely something you've got to keep your eye on. Changes all the time. I mean, like literally, Donna and I read publications probably every day, and share them with each other to kind of know what's on, what's really coming down, and the foresights, et cetera, about the legislative people and what their thoughts are on it, et cetera, et cetera. So you're absolutely right.
Well, I'm really interested to hear the backstory here because you two are nationally known in cannabis and banking, and you obviously you work for Community Choice Credit Union. So how did that all come to pass, and what were the drivers to make Community Choice lean into the cannabis industry?
So I can take that. So about 6 years ago, our CEO, Rob, and our Chief Operating Officer, Dan, found that there was a need out there in the industry. And so we were just all about people helping people. So they reached out to, well, we actually did a bunch of training, researched cannabis banking for a few years prior, and then decided to launch it and create what's called a pilot program in Michigan. So they reached out to me. I was in another role and asked if I can find a few people that wanted to join our cannabis banking program and just pilot and tell us what they liked, didn't like, etc. That turned into me making about 5 phone calls, then turned into my phone blowing up. And I went back to my team and said, okay, we have a problem. Everybody has a need. And at the time, there were only a couple financial institutions that were even banking cannabis. But I reached out to people that I have known for a very long time that, trusted me, trusted in Community Choice. So they decided to take a chance. So I started receiving referral after referral after referral. And then our team decided to create a role for me and move me into cannabis banking, which then evolved into a whole department, which fast forward 6 years later, we have about 860 cannabis related accounts in Michigan. We've expanded to Ohio, Florida, some other states as well. If we find that there's, people here in Michigan that have expanded to, like our bigger members, they've expanded to other states. And so we've decided to take on some of those. But it's really just grown on trust, and we handle everything with white glove service. So our dedicated team is there to support everything we do. And so here we are today. Like, honestly, I think we're just probably one of the fastest growing in the cannabis side, and most trusted, where even, we use a lot of our really good compliance partners like Shield, and we do everything right. And we even lend to cannabis, which is really good too.
So talk to me about the range of depositors that you have in this industry.
Oh, it's all different. It depends. I mean, certain areas, you might be in a market like right now, we're seeing New Buffalo is just a very, very booming market, right? I pulled up and I thought I felt like I was in Disneyland for cannabis. Every corner, and they're huge. They're huge. One of them was an old hotel, and he just turned it into a cannabis space, and he's putting a restaurant and a pizza place and all these other things in there because he's got the space there. So It just varies, and then you might go, we have some out in the UP, so it's a little bit more of a different area. But we're spread out. It's funny because I do go visit all of our stores, and Jason has came along with me. They're all completely different. It's fun. It's fun hearing about, their needs and what they do.
Is that part of the due diligence? You actually have boots on the ground in the store?
Well, we know the CRA doesn't, and we use Shield Compliance as our compliance partner, but it is part of what we like to just, I go out there and, when Jason comes along, we educate the employees about, hey, we bank you as an employee. We can give you a mortgage, an auto loan, an account. You don't have to worry about as soon as you get to the last step and you got to provide a pay stub and you see that it's somebody that's you're getting paid by Cannabis, you don't have to worry about it. We got you. And so it's part of that. It's just making ourselves known out there. And honestly, I think that's another really big win of ours. I've actually gained a lot of new business from the employees. But it
You
is it
know,
is a good idea to be out there and just make sure that we are banking a property that is legitimately there.
so I have a I don't know, a 3 or 4 year gap in my knowledge of where we are today, and that's part of my goal days to have you guys spin me up from where we were 4 years ago, and it just seems like a unbelievably massive lift for a bank to take this on. Is it still like that?
It it is, but we're a credit union, so it's a little bit different. And Jason actually says really good. He actually handles this question really well. I'll let you take that one, Jason.
Sure. Yeah. So it really depends. There's a lot of technicalities to it. And so it depends on, because it's federally illegal, do you have a federal charter? Do you not have a federal charter? And being that we're a credit union based out of Michigan and our charter is in Michigan, we can operate in Michigan legally and then obviously in other states on a case by case basis. But it really just depends on what each state says. And some of those more legal technicalities is around how your entity is set up, how your charter is set up, that sort of thing. So it just depends. But for us, we can do it. And, that's music to a lot of our cannabis owners' ears because it's hard for them to find a trusted partner, let alone one that can do it to begin with.
Mhm.
And one thing I'll just share about that community is that, being in banking for a couple of decades, almost a few, don't want to age myself there, but this is fairly new in my career too, just a few years in, and I have to tell you that this community is one of the nicest, uh, most due diligent communities I've worked with, and I think
Mm.
there's a lot of stigma and a lot of misunderstanding around this community. And I have never worked in an environment where it's been just not only fun, but everybody's doing what they should be doing. And again, I think there's just so much misinformation out there, but this community is great. They're stellar. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but banking this community right now.
Wow.
That's how much fun it is. And we rarely ever have any issues or problems because our members in this space are so focused on staying compliant and doing the right thing. And again, I think that's just
Mhm.
another common misconception that's out there. But the reality is they're amazing. And if anything, because it is such a very highly regulatory environment, these folks know how to do regulation better than anybody now, as far as I'm concerned, in compliance. They're very, very good at what they do. And they learn from us and we learn from them every day.
Boy, when you got into this, you didn't think you were going to be spoiled by it, did you?
I really had no idea what to think. I remember when I first entered this space and I was sort of interviewing for this role, and they'd asked me what I know about cannabis banking, and I didn't know too much. I knew enough, but not too much. And then when I got into it, obviously I realized it was going to be a lot of lessons in compliance because we do want to make sure that we're following all laws and all regulations
Mm.
and helping again provide that and being a trusted partner in that space as well for our members is part of the value that we provide. And I also think that just understanding, like I was saying earlier, when Don and I are reading these publications, understanding what's on the horizon, being an expert in the space, which I'm not sure I can call myself, but I can for sure say that Donna is. She's just extraordinary at what she does. That does get around because we're in this circle. I think we're all trying to find people who do it well because everybody wants to succeed and do it right. And so, and not harm our communities, but help them. And so a lot of people aren't aware. A lot of what happens with the tax revenue that's generated from cannabis is it does go directly into to many areas like that help social causes like the roads and schools and education, things like that, that most people aren't even aware of. They just hear again the negative things and sort of the stigma, which I understand why they hear that, but there's so much
Right.
good going on behind the scenes.
Well, Jason, I want to follow up with something you said just a bit ago. You were talking about misconceptions people have about these dispensaries. So what's that look like going the other direction? What are misconceptions people have about cannabis banking?
Well, I'm going to draw my own just sort of personal, bias prior to me coming into the space. I think, people do have a tendency of associating marijuana, cannabis with just, the hardcore drugs that I think many of us that are older like me were raised to believe it was just like everything else, not really understanding the benefit to it. And again, I'm not here to advocate for, just all the great things that I do believe it does for people, especially on a medical front as well. But I think that people can get caught up if they're not familiar with cannabis or just the differences of the scheduling of drugs and so forth. I think they can maybe have some misconceptions around, maybe people just want to use it to party or things like that. But in my experience, I've seen really quite the opposite, actually. People have used it very responsibly. And I believe it's helped many, many people. And the more I'm in this space and the more conventions I go to, the more I actually hear directly from people that it has helped. And we also stay very much in touch with them as well. And so one of the things that I found very interesting about what I'm suggesting right now is that even when President Trump recently, a couple of weeks ago, made the announcement to reschedule, if you noticed in the Oval Office behind him were many medical professionals talking about sort of the misconception of it is and why, from even a medical standpoint, it's been very beneficial to help people. And I think that from where I come from, personally, I always, to Donna's point around our vision of the credit union, our mission, people helping people, I like the idea that I'm participating in something that I do believe helps other people. And there's
Mhm.
always going to be outliers. There's always going to be, things that aren't always like that. But for the most part, I really think this industry is very misunderstood.
Well, so let's talk about how your institution got started in this. What was the inflection point when your leadership at the credit union said, "Hey, you know what? We're comfortable now on the risk side, the operations, onboarding these clients, and then also increasing our sales footprint."
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was for your credit union. I mean, this
Yeah,
this this seems to me as an outsider that would be a lot, right?
yeah.
We've got to be able to we've got to mitigate this risk. We have to onboard these new members in your case, and then also we have to get comfortable with expanding our sales footprint. I mean, that just seems like a whole lot for leadership to take on.
Yeah, I mean it was, and this is why we have a lot of different channels that this touches. So from the onset of a new application, like I have the onboarding discussion, and then we have the document review process, which goes through Shield, and then it goes to another the document review process goes to our apps team. From there, it goes to our risk specialist team, so either our VP or manager of risk, and then comes back to me. So there's a lot of hands touching these applications, and to make sure that there's a lot of eyes making sure that these applications, everything is collected. We have
Mm.
checklists. I mean, there's a big full review. So it's not, one of those things where, if you wanted to open an account, we're just collecting basic information like a regular business account. It's truly not that. And if we're missing an item, we cannot move forward. And there is ongoing compliance too. So we do monthly reviews, annual reviews. There's a lot of compliance around them. So this is why a lot of the bigger banks, it's just a lot of work. But we
Yeah.
decided to really take it on.
And Donna, to piggyback on what you're saying too, it's my understanding because Donna was there, on the ground floor when they built this program, and I wasn't there yet. And I will tell you that it sounds to me that there was genuinely a need in the community because, again, there wasn't that many financial institutions banking this in Michigan. And as you may or may not know, or your listeners may or may not know, Michigan is sort of dubbed as the wild, wild west of cannabis because when it went recreational, we saw a huge spike. And, if you come to Michigan, one of the first things that will hit you is the dispensary signs, the advertisements, et cetera, and you can't really miss it. And so, like I said, it's a great community. And I think that it was just there was a genuine need there. And so obviously our leadership, working with Donna, stood up and said, we'll help with this. And I think what Donna was articulating was it's a very, very risky environment, a lot of high compliance, a lot of different moving parts to it. And so I can understand why, to her point, a lot of other financial institutions may want to avoid it because it's just a lot of risk. But we were able to, again, partner with Shield Compliance, which is a very respected partner in this space, learn the programming, learn ourselves what we were doing. And Donna really spearheaded most of those efforts. And as a result, it actually not only helped our business and all of those we helped them, but it created jobs. It created an entire sort of department, if you will, that we were allowed to then provide this white glove service that's our differentiator that from our other financial institutions, which we can talk about later if you're interested. But it was a very loaded question, but a very good one that you just asked. So there was a lot of different moving parts to it.
I think it's interesting, Jason. You were talking about earlier, just since you personally have gotten into this, you've changed your mind on a lot of things since you've become educated on it.
Yes.
So what did that look like from the financial institution standpoint? Because obviously reputation is the most important thing.
Yes, I agree. It's a great point, and certainly an observation to your point that I've made. I think it really helps, again, when we spread the right messaging. And so I don't think the right messaging has always been out there. And frankly, it makes me feel kind of bad for a lot of our members because they work so hard and they give so much back to the community. And so I'll give you an example. Recently here in Michigan, our state legislator passed a 24% excise tax on top of the 6% sales tax, on top of an already 10%. So do the math, it's 40%. And these folks, I mean, imagine for those listening who are not in cannabis, you having to pay 40% of everything you made. And so what these folks are working so hard at what they do, again, in my opinion, to help people. And all of that, that tax revenue, all those tax dollars are going towards paying for all sorts of things that benefit most people in the state of Michigan. And a lot of these people don't even realize it. And so I think that when we do see things like, the White House rescheduling cannabis, and we do see our legislators understanding it, which I'm not so certain all of them do, if you want the truth. When you start seeing that ignorance go away and more education around this, you start seeing the stigma go away. And that, that starts to make people like our institution, for instance, in my opinion, look even more respected because they see that we were in it from the get-go. We would never deal with bad actors or anything that wasn't kosher, so to speak. And so we're hoping that as our president and as the state legislators and so forth start to explain the tax revenue and the implications and how it impacts our state and even our federal government to some extent, I think you'll start to see less stigma and more understanding, which will help, not only institutions like ours get more respect for banking it, but just in general, the industry itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just I'm smiling here. My sister and I met with our cousin yesterday, and our grandmother was she was a child of the Depression, which you've known some of those people in your life, and how their mindset's framed and how they think about things very different than us.
Oh yes.
And it was funny because it was we called her Granny, and my granny. All that being said, she was a thoroughly modern woman. But we were just talking about this yesterday, and she would have a drink alcohol, but very moderate. But man, I tell you what, if there's like even a rumor of someone using marijuana, I mean, just lock them up, throw away the key.
And what's sad about that is that's happened to many people across the country. And we also, as we go to various conventions and cannabis events, really all over the country, but we hear from people, and we have organizations, a lot of nonprofits that are actually helping people in those situations that you're describing because there was so much misinformation.
Yeah.
And even across the world, Don and I were at MJ BizCon recently in Las Vegas, and a group had come up to us there and had informed us that there was a pro basketball player that was potentially might be unalived through execution in a different country because he had $40 worth of gummies on him to help with his Crohn's disease. I mean, and it's like if you don't understand, first of all, that was given to him as a gift from another country from somebody to help him with Crohn's disease, to give it a try, so to speak, which most people don't even realize. And, I don't want to make this conversation about him, but it's just a great example of how even in other countries, which I know we can't control their countries and what their thoughts are on this, but there's just so much misinformation. And I can understand what you're saying. My grandparents were from the Depression era too, and I remember how we couldn't waste anything, not even a sip of milk in our cereal, and the stockpiles of things in the attic, and so I know precisely, I believe what you're talking about, and I know that my grandparents, if they were still alive, would have been very naive to it too. But again, you only know what you know. And one of the people I love to quote is Dr. Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. And certainly I think I was part of that stigma era too. And I've started to see it, go get less and less over the years. I mean, I remember all the way back to President Clinton, when I remember his famous thing was, "I didn't inhale." And what a big deal that was back then. And today I would argue that that wouldn't really matter. Nobody would even care about something like that. So we've made a lot of change over the past several decades for sure.
Yeah, I hadn't contemplated that, but even, Clinton, had he said that 10 years earlier, that would have been just an absolute disqualifier.
That's right. That's right. Kind of like driving a foreign car. I remember when I was younger, if you drove a foreign car and you're running for any office, even local office, it was done. You were pretty much out, but now
Yeah.
not so much. There's been a lot of changes. That's right, as we become more and more globalized.
hmm Yeah, it's you're bringing back a lot of memories now because
Yeah.
my same granny I was talking about, my paternal grandfather died when I was very young, and she married a guy of the greatest generation, right? And he was a barber, outdoorsman. He had these hands with like vice grips on the end of them, and fought in World War II in the Pacific Theater, a Navy man, and he had, as you might guess, very very strong opinions on us, particularly Japanese and German import cars.
Sure,
So
because you only know what you know at that
you know what
time.
you know.
That's
Yeah.
right. Makes total sense.
hmm
So, I try to give people the grace of understanding where they were in their era and sort of, in their life at that time. But I think we've definitely evolved to a different place today for sure.
hmm
And it's one that is absolutely catching the attention and quite frankly, captivating a lot of financial institutions across the country.
Yeah, so you guys obviously have a really good lead on the business development side on this. Do you see that obviously there's time and a lot of hurdles that you have to jump, that gives you a buffer, but do you see that lead you have, as you're going to be able to expand that, or are there factors that's going to make that shrink, or will it just stay the same?
So yeah, I mean the leads, we do expand on them, and actually Jason and I were just talking about this earlier, where we do see a lot of our owners, they're not just owners operators, but they're actually dabbling into other things now. So as they are going into other industries on the side, they are looking to us for banking. So we do see that, or if they're looking for auto loans or mortgages or whatever that is, they do come to us for those needs, and they refer
But
people like crazy as well.
this is all anchored by the fact that you're banking their business,
Yes,
right?
yes, we
Yeah.
help them. I think the biggest thing, and I get asked this question a lot, like, are we worried about like if things change with safe banking? We're not. And the reason is we helped people when other financial institutions shut them down.
hmm
So we were there for them. So as, if you were in cannabis, but let's say you had, your kids' accounts or, your joint account that's personal, some financial institutions shut everything down. And so now they're stuck. They have all these checks in hand and they don't know what to do. So we're able to help them. So we're really hoping, and we hear it from our members, that they'll be here to stay, in the future, just because we gave them a place to bank.
So that's a key differentiator then between Community Choice and some of your competitors, is you guys had all the proper boxes ticked, and you've not had to shut someone off just because you didn't understand that state's regulation, or there's some other risk factor.
Correct. I was in the
Yeah.
other side prior to cannabis banking. I worked for another big bank, and I was that person that was having to unfortunately send those letters and call people and shut them down because they were in the cannabis industry. So now it's nice that, when I hear, like I had a call this morning and he said, one of my employees tried to negotiate his personal check because he works for a dispensary. He tried to negotiate it at another financial institution. They would not cash it. He's like, do you know why? They basically said something about the entity name that the check's coming from. And in my head, I'm like, well, it's because it's cannabis related. So I just then told him, just have your employee call me. Let me talk it through. So we take the lead. I always say, you know what, share my number. I'll be happy to talk it through. Or, as people are like, oh, my account's frozen. I'm not sure why the financial institution doesn't want to tell me why. I'm like, but they should. But if they don't want to, 99% of the time it's because they're in the cannabis industry. So we jump on it. We've learned to do everything remotely just because, during COVID we had to learn how to do everything remotely. So we have all of our processes set where we're able to do all of our authenticators. So we're able to help people quickly and keep their business flowing or even their personal accounts flowing and get all their bills paid.
So you're probably aware of this, but this is a big problem in credit card processing because obviously a lot of people in my space want to get into that, but what will happen is you can get a customer onboarded and then they come to work one morning and the machine doesn't work, and they call the 800 number, and their processor says, well, our sponsoring bank shut this off, and sorry about your luck, right? And it is we've really stayed away from that and that this has been for a number of reasons, but this is the primary driver, right? There's just so many horror stories, and you got a merchant, they're calling you, they're upset. I mean, this is their livelihood, but on the other hand, the problem is we don't really have any control over that, and that's still, as I'm sure you're keenly aware, a really big problem in merchant services.
It is,
Oh,
and we
yes.
see that it gets shut down at the prime times that they need it, 420 day, right
Mhm.
before the holidays. And that's hard because then their money's tied up. Their
Mhm.
money is tied up and they don't know if they're going to when that money is going to get released. And so, and people come in thinking they could run their cards. I mean, if they have an ATM, it's a good alternative, but sometimes people just don't have that. They don't have the extra money. They want to use a credit card.
And
Well,
just to shed some light on this for the listening audience, it dawned on me they may not know this. So what we're really talking about is that because it's federally illegal, a lot of financial institutions, including credit card processors, et cetera, who have that federal charter, they can't bank it. And so what ends up happening is even for folks who, have a legitimate license, the whole nine yards, their employees, let's say, bank at another bank that has a federal charter, for example. There's just many examples, by the way. When that bank gets notified, and they usually do one way or the other, and it's always the most inconvenient timing ever. It's just Murphy's Law. They will shut you down and they will say, hey, we understand you're being paid by cannabis money and we can't bank you anymore. And there's really no grounds for appeal from what I understand. It's just this date, boom, you're done. And so it leaves a lot of folks scrambling and they end up calling institutions like ours. And lately, because of Donna's good work and others on my team, they've been calling us because they've seen us out in the marketplace. But one of the things when it comes to merchant services that I quickly realized probably in my first week on the job doing this was it would be a godsend for a lot of our dispensary owners, especially to be able to accept merchant services. And Don and I meet with several of our folks, including here at Evolve, all the time because we want to be ready immediately when we are able to finally be able to do that. But we also, to your point earlier, we don't want to put them in a position either that's going to get them shut down and actually harm their business because we found a lot of it as of right now tends to be workarounds and loopholes that don't really exist. At least that we found that are going to be working because again, the last thing we'd want to do is put one of our members in a situation where we tell them, yeah, you can do this, or call so-and-so, they can do this for you. And then, a month, 2 months later, they get shut down. That makes us look bad. It makes them look bad. It adds to that stigma we talked about earlier. We want our community, as all of our members do, to do the right thing. And because when we do the right thing and we follow the rules, it does eliminate the stigma, which will then hopefully usher in it being legal one day to where we can then allow people to do it. And so a lot of the burden, believe it or not, I believe is on us as a community, because when we do it right, that's what does slow the stigma down. And so, and I don't want to be dramatic about it, but just also to paint a picture for the listeners, a lot of the dispensary workers who are just ordinary people, like Don and myself and it can even be their mortgage. They can't get a mortgage, or they'll go through the whole process, and then right at the closing table, they'll say, "Oh my gosh, we realize you were paid with cannabis money." And they're like, "But it's my job. I mean, I didn't do anything wrong." Even if they don't smoke it, it's just the fact that they're being paid by cannabis. And so it's more of a problem than a lot of people think it is, including people that work in the industry. It's almost, many of them in my experience have to be burned by it to believe us that it may happen. It's just a matter of time. And again, it's nice to know we're there for them when it does happen, that they can come to us. And not to sound like a commercial, but one of the things Community Choice does, and I'm really proud of, is we don't gouge people. We don't charge premium rates just because we can, because other institutions won't bank them. We're very fair, and because we're a credit union, we often have very, very good deals that other institutions can't provide, in my opinion. And so they're getting the best of both worlds. They're getting a very fair pricing package that is not being gouged because we could if we wanted to. We don't do that. We don't play dirty like that.
Thanks for tuning in today. We got a lot of good content and we ran over, so we decided to break this up into 2 episodes. I'll see you here next Wednesday on Get Your Mind Right.